Hi, this is Mike Furchess with Real People, Real Life, back with you here in Wichita, Kansas,
America.
If Robin was here, she says we never tell the guests, but we've done it enough that they're catching on. Our next guest, EthanBates. Ethan, tell us something about yourself, how we've come to know each other. And
Oh, Mike, I've known you now for, it'd be over a decade. Known you from wrestling.
Yeah.
Known you through your son. He and I, same weight class, competed against each other, became best friends. Wrestled in college, came back just to help him win state for Clearwater from my hometown. Went on to college, graduated from KU, worked in the oil field for 4 years. While I was out in the oil field, traveling all over the country, I'd take pictures with my cell phone, and I would throw them on a website that was based out of Europe, and all of a sudden my pictures were selling, and I had no idea why. And come to find out, apparently I had an eye for it, just using a cell phone.
so, first thing we talked with Mary Jane about telling story and using folk music. And there's an author out of Tennessee that I really like a lot named Jim Palmer. And he'll use a photograph and then put like one or two sentences to that photograph that will tell a novel.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a magic to photography. And I had never seen your photographs. And then about a year or so ago, I thought, goodness gracious, this guy. And I contacted. This is amazing. Tell us how you learned the skill and the craft and the trade.
Just through teaching myself, just like Mary Jane said, how she taught herself music, and so she's developed her own way of doing so. My photography has developed its own identity in itself and has set myself apart from a lot of the rest, just because it's unorthodox.
Well, what do you mean by being an unorthodox and how it sets yourself apart?
For instance, like right now, the equipment I'm using a Sony a6000 body camera, which is almost 7 years old. It's over 7 years old now, but I'm using lenses that are 45 plus years old. Like right now on my camera, which I have right here, this is a 45-year-old lens I have on a brand new body. And when using that style lens, you get a vintage look, you get a sharper look, you get different looks than you get anything with autofocus, or even in the new setups now with how the lenses work. So by figuring that out, I just kind of figured out my own way to do things.
Okay.
And it makes it unique.
Yeah. Anytime anybody has a question, jump in here.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the things there are basically two kinds of camera, and I brought ours, mine and Mary Jane's.
Mm-hmm.
This is a Canon. You're using a Sony there, but this uses multiple styles of lenses and so forth.
Yep.
A lot of the new cameras, I'm assuming yours as well. You can do video work with that as well. And then the other kind is the Mary Jane has. Here we have the Sure Shot, which I guess is considered a point and shoot.
Yeah, this is what I originally started out with, which I showed you when I saw you guys again for the first time in years, that old Nikon that I had brought.
Yeah.
That was a Nikon L840. That was a $150 camera that paid for itself in the first couple months of ever owning it. And I never, ever thought I would be into photography or even get into it financially, but here it happened, and it was all from a start.
Was a point and shoot. What's the differences between the two styles of cameras?
Point and shoot, you're only going to have a certain aspect ratio for your, your aspect ratio is going to be a lot tighter. You're not going to have near as many megapixels to use. So if you go to print,
you're speaking to idiots here.
Yeah.
Okay, so explain some of this.
So if your megapixel is really low, you can only get your image to a certain size. And like with this is 24 megapixels, so you could print up to, I believe it's 11 by 24, and it'd be sharp, dead on with what the image is, all the way up to billboard. But when you go into the point and shoots, you're going to run into a limit with like 8 by 10s, stuff that any normal person would normally want framed in their home, like family pictures and stuff. So if you're taking normal pictures yourself, this is what you'd want. If you're taking pictures, to be blown up even bigger or even have a greater artistry work, that's when you'd want to use this, because you have way further less limitations with this than you do with a point and shoot.
For those that are watching, you can find Ethan's work. How can they find and see some of your photography?
If you go to my Facebook page is public. I normally work from word of mouth because I feel like you have a stronger clientele base that way. I'm working on a website right now, but I'm kind of waiting on travel arrangements to see where I'm going to be before I make that happen. But through Facebook, just look me up, EthanBates, or through Instagram also. I put a lot of my print work on Instagram, and that's where a lot of my clientele come from for prints.
And we have a flash drive. If we're able to do it, we're going to try to insert some of the photographs during the segment that people can look at as well.
Yep.
So
I Googled you when Mike told me to
Mm-hmm.
find his friend Ethan. And yeah, there are quite a few. And there's quite a few on Facebook too.
Yeah.
So the A is important there. Ethan A. Bates.
A. Bates.
But what first came up is your images.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Google Ethan Bates images, and you're going to be treated to some really nice viewing of.
I mean, what did you, when you saw what did you think when you first saw some of those?
I didn't expect such a young man.
Yeah.
When we met here, but because of what you had referred to earlier, some of them look dated or more antique. Is that a fair word to use? They look older, antiquated, vintage. There's the word.
So I like to think of it.
So I assumed perhaps you took them then, and they were old. Not that you took them now and made them look that. And yes, I don't know a whole lot about. I'm not smarter than a fifth grader when it comes to these. Kodachrome's dead, right? Or is that still what this third camera here is doing?
Well, they're all digital. You can do Kodachrome techniques, but
you can do the same exact thing with this.
But they're all digital. They'll
They're
go
all
into
digital.
a computer and something comes out.
Yep, and I have a film camera that I also will shoot with every now and then, and that's what keeps you sharp. Like that's why I use these. So instead of relying on an autofocus, it's all old school mechanical, by eye, manually focused in. So it keeps you sharp in your game. Like master your tool to master your trade.
So you can still buy film as I knew it then and get it developed somewhere?
Yes, sir. Yep. You can scan it in, and that's how they can print it out if you want to shoot film that way or develop it yourself into your own prints.
are you doing any of your own development?
No, I do not. No, not with the film. All digital though. I do all the editing work myself and everything like that.
How easy is it to do the editing with the digital now?
It's easy. It's easy, but if you have a certain style that you're going for, and especially depending on the pictures, it can take a while. Like if you have a standard shoot where you're doing a portrait shoot for people, you're gonna want to put more time into that to make sure they look good. Any kind of flaws, skin flaws, shadowing, anything like that. You want to make sure those are spot on because this is for a client. Versus if I go out and shoot like a lightning bolt or anything like that, the only status quo I have to meet is my own standards for that image. So it's easier.
What's the difference? I mean, explain some of the differences as a photographer in shooting for a client versus shooting for yourself, and what gives the most satisfaction and the benefits and the negatives of each.
The most satisfactory thing when it comes to shooting portraits are when people will share your work and talk it up and constantly use it. I mean, to take social media, for example, seeing somebody like on Instagram or on Facebook I'll constantly have comments where I'm tagged in them because they're tagging me in the pictures that I took. So it's a very, very rewarding feeling. The downside is the waiting period. People, it's almost like as soon as I get in my car after the shoot, they're waiting for their pictures. Waiting, not realizing that you have other clients also you're having to take care of. So that's when communication comes into hand. But that's no big deal because it's just communication. When it comes to landscape and stuff, honestly, it's all pluses because, like I said, there is no bar to reach. It's just you have what you have to work with. You shoot with what you have.
That's for your own. It's for your own gratification.
Your own gratification, and you also got to think of things in perspective. Like what would catch the eye of somebody that would want to buy this? Who would want to hang this in their home or office?
So you're actually thinking about, or a photographer is actually thinking about while they're taking the picture, not only for the satisfaction of their photograph, they're thinking about what people like that might sell.
Mm-hmm.
And the selling point is important because.
Well, money's nice to have, but you got to realize to make that money, you have to be artistically good. Like, it's so heavily saturated right now. The market is like you can go on Instagram and type in professional photography, and you're gonna have millions every couple minutes new pictures being uploaded. Yeah. So you got to have something that's truly artistically different. Like, yeah, money comes into play, but you got to have that.
I got a question here, and I hope that some of the viewers don't take it wrong in any way, or that you would take it wrong. I know your family a little bit, your mom Janet and your dad as well. Tell us some about your family. And there's a reason I want you to do this. Just tell us briefly about your family, what they do, and a little bit about them.
Well, my parents are involved in real estate, and they travel all over the place. They're involved with a travel company. They've been nothing but supportive of this whole thing. Like, ever since I left the oil industry, making $70,000+ a year, doing that at 23 years old as a foreman, and I left that because I decided I'd rather be broke than time broke. And my family has been nothing but supportive. They blast all my stuff for everybody to see all the time. Always give me new ideas whenever they can. I have a little brother working as a machinist for Clearwater Engineering out of Derby. Brother that's married in Topeka.
Now, one of the reasons I make mention of this is that artistic, if you think of that artistic tent, the artisan mentality, it's not something that someone would see immediately in your family. I mean, your mom's a great decorator. I've been to your house, been some time, and Kelly's a great guy, and your brothers are. So, but if I think of them, I think of an artist coming from an artist family. Is that? I mean, that seems to be typical a lot of times. Does it to you, Woody?
I think it depends on the art form.
Okay.
You know, I think in music, more likely, the family all sung.
Yeah.
But in picture taking,
My father was a
only
great
one
singer.
person clicked the shutter button and the rest posed. So I don't know that.
My
I think
mother
it would
always,
depend on the art
My mother
form.
always took pictures of all of us when we were kids. Like, we have totefuls of pictures.
So sometimes those skills may be there. They may be some inherent skills
Inherently, I think.
that are
there's
there, but you don't necessarily know it.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden, someone like yourself comes out, and you're doing stuff, and it's like, whoa! I mean, I've seen some of your stuff. The dirt road, the guy riding the bicycle carrying
Yeah.
the guitar.
Yeah.
I told you, man, I want to use that for an album cover. That would be a great album cover.
Mhm.
But there's things like that I would never have imagined a little Ethan Bates being that talented as an artist, and yet you are. So
I
we got some more
appreciate
things.
that.
We got a lot more things I want to talk about. I'm going to have you walk us through some basic instruction on
Okay.
some photography things and explaining what's going on, and then we'll be right back after the break. Again, this is Mike Furchess with Real People, Real Life, and our guest Ethan Bates, Mary Jane Furchess over there, and Woody, my right hand man, right here. We'll be back with you right after the break.